Hello, welcome to the Saints and Sinners virtual reading series. I am Lisa Dordal, and I am the author of this book, Mosaic of the Dark, from Black Lawrence Press, and I'm delighted to be participating in this series. In this first poem that I'm going to read, I draw from an experience I had as a child going to the neighborhood toy and candy store. This was in the 1970s in Hyde Park on the south side of Chicago. And the store was very popular with kids. And one thing that really stands out to me about that memory is that it seemed like the woman who worked there was one woman who worked there. It seemed like she did not really like kids, which is kind of a problem if you work in a toy and candy store. And so one of the things I'm doing in this poem is imagining what other life she might have chosen for herself. And this was, as I said, this was in the 70s. She was probably in her 60s, late 50s, early 60s. So she would have grown up in a time when there weren't as many options for women career-wise. For the cashier at T.R. Wolfe's Toy and Candy. To enter the pinched interior of T.R. Wolfe's Toy and Candy was to risk her squint that branded every kid a thief. Her hair pulled back into a coarse gray stone, her face bony and sad as we tap our fingers against the counter glass to pronounce our choice of pink cigarettes cloaked in sugary smoke, or from the sundry collection of jigsaw puzzles lining the store's high-shelved perimeter, our choice of Barbie and Ken's dream house, the cockpit of a Concorde, UFOs over a Midwest wheat farm, puzzles that would spread like sea garbage across our bedroom floors. How can it be that this is what was given her, not a pursuit of quiet, brainy labor, reading the ash in Nile River mud, or probing the loss of an ancient grave, head to head, a girl and a boy, and beads too many to count? Only this, the daily repetition of warm coins passing from our hands into hers, and how can I not admire her for her refusal to feign contentment? Whatever it was she wanted, getting us instead. So about 10 years ago, I became reacquainted with someone I went to grammar school with through Facebook, of course. And as soon as I found out he was gay, I knew I needed to write this poem. This is called Sixth Grade. Under a warm June sun during the break between social studies and language arts, they married us off. Our bodies surrounded on the cracked pavement of our schoolyard by friends, classmates, then by something larger, sovereign and invisible. Bruce in wide jeans, a pink Oxford button-down, and brown tie-ups so shiny you could see birds in the patches of sky they reflected. Everything about him beautiful. Me in a short purple dress and soda orange sneakers that the older sister of my best friend told me had to go. A boy named Peter officiated, spoke the words that blended us together, the same boy who told me there were two types of women, that I was the kind men married, not the kind men used for practicing what they never wanted to perfect. Even in the race-sore 70s on Chicago's South Side, no one minded this one rupture, this one tear in the taught dictates of order, that he was black and I was white. But they wouldn't tolerate our queerness. The clang of missed baskets, other kids shooting hoops was our music, that and the cursing that always followed. So I should say that we got divorced 3 days later. It was a very short marriage. The other interesting thing is that a friend of mine actually made a toaster for us out of a shoebox. She even made toast with out of a brown sheet of construction paper with yellow paper on top for the butter. So we were clearly mimicking these rituals that we had seen adults engage in. The other thing I should say is that I was slightly disappointed when I asked Bruce about this, and he barely remembered our marriage. It was quite disappointing. So the next couple of poems are from a longer series of poems that I've written about my mother. I have a bit of an obsession with my mother. My mother died in 2001 from issues that were partly related, I think, to her alcoholism. And it's also possible that she was a lesbian, but because of the time period in which she grew up, she was not able to live that out. These poems are addressed to my mother, so the you in these poems is my mother. Intersection. Your freezer had died, the melted blood of raw, damp meat everywhere on the kitchen floor, bright and contagious across flat brown tiles. Father was 10 time zones away, studying the ancient gods of ancient Greece, and we were stopped at a light 2 blocks from Sears. It was there I let form in my mouth one baited word after another to utter the question, have you ever thought you might be? That hung in the cramped space between us. Father's first words, maybe your mother is too, when I came out. It wasn't an option, you said, your head never turning, both of us looking straight into the lucid circle of red that in that moment provided all the direction we cared for. What more could we say about a revelation carrying the whole sinewy weight of non-being? The thousands of ways you'd said no, deferred, followed, and agreed, making yourself smaller and smaller, a god of old clay, buried and powerless, but for the tiny part that broke out, sneaked out sly, the resounding yes of your 7th conception, as if I birthed you. The next one in this series is called Holy Week. A couple weeks before my mother died, she was in the hospital. Actually a couple months before she died, she was in the hospital for a week. And I really treasured this week because it meant she did not have access to her alcohol. Holy Week. Laid up in the heart wing because your valves weren't right. You couldn't get to your jars hidden in bookcases throughout the house. I feel fine, you'd say, every time I called, going on about the terrible smells and noises and strangers' proddings. I loved your being there. That whole week, I loved. That whole week, a clean, bright patch stuck to the stink and slur and soil of every week before. Several times a day, I called to hear the clearness in your voice, as if I could store it up somehow, capture it, go back to it again and again to that week, that 1 week when you came back. And this next poem, I have 2 more poems I'm going to read. This one is called Survival, which is about the rather unpleasant experience of dating in high school. For me, dating guys when really I was a lesbian was a bit of a challenge. Survival. Inside the pizzeria, love's latest news was carved into the darkly stained surface of every table. The force of blunt gray knives and shameless teenage muscle, creating a landscape of peak impeccably done. Caroline is a bitch, Liz and Tommy forever, Sheila likes pussy. Later, my own name next to the words cock and teaser. I ordered salad and minestrone, pizza I knew would be messy. One of the many tips I'd read in 17, along with, look interested, don't disagree, and be yourself. My date ordered chicken still on the bone. There were others after this, different names, a father's borrowed cologne, filling the air between us, eventually making myself homely, shapeless, anything to let the no come instead from them. So I'm going to close with a poem that is called The Lies That Save Us. This one is dedicated to my wife of over 20 years. And in this poem, I make a reference to a story from the book of Genesis, in which Abraham and Sarah are traveling through a foreign land, and Abraham lies about his relationship to Sarah to protect himself. The lies that save us. Driving through Georgia, we lie like Abraham. Are you sisters? People ask. Yes, we answer, twins even. Though we are dressed similarly in broad-brimmed hats, long-sleeve shirts, and tan pants tucked into thick white socks, it being tick season and all, we look nothing alike. Thought so, people say, as if they have figured out some secret code. We smile back, knowing the power of things unseen, atoms, quarks, and auras, and all the love that lies between. Kissing energy, we call it, but all they can see is something. So thank you all for listening. I hope people are doing as well as they can during these challenging times, and that people are staying as safe and healthy as they can. Thank you.